Thanks everyone for coming to the meeting for the public hearing tonight. Dr. Stiles, would you like to read your comments, please?
As each speaker's name is called, he or she should proceed to the podium at the end of the board's dais where there is a microphone and a light system. Each speaker has up to 3 minutes to speak to the board. The light system will be green for the first 2 minutes and will turn yellow when 1 minute remains on the speaker's allotted time. In keeping with board policy KCA, abusive language or personal attacks aimed at students or staff members will not be permitted. All speakers are expected to behave in an orderly and respectful manner. The board will not engage in discussion with the speaker or respond to comments. The superintendent will designate a member of the staff to respond to each speaker in an appropriate and timely manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Stiles. We have 4 speakers signed up tonight. First speaker is Tamara Uria.
Good evening. First of all, thank you for allowing me to share my thoughts with you today. I know your time is valuable and it is much appreciated. My name is Tammy Uri and I'm an ESOL teacher at Greenville Middle Academy. I have just completed my 15th year of teaching, all in Greenville County, and as crazy as it sounds, I'm looking forward to another 15 years. I'm here today to share a teacher's point of view about the raise for teachers included in the proposed budget. This year I've witnessed the mass exodus of teachers leaving the profession, and to be honest, it is alarming. And I'm not talking about new teachers. This isn't a regular turnover that we see every year. I'm talking about veteran teachers who are leaving for entirely different careers that offer bonuses and consistent raises or pay for classes and certifications that lead to advancement. If we expect to maintain and improve the quality of our district's educational offering for the benefit of our students, we must double down on the positive changes that have been made and continue to evolve our tactics to stem the bleeding of one of our county's most vital resources: talented, passionate, and experienced educators. I first want to call out the strong strides our county has made to begin addressing this problem. Greenville County has set a very competitive starting salaries for its teachers. The county also offers clear and creative non-traditional paths to becoming a teacher with excellent support and incentives. These amazing initiatives help attract talent to our challenging and rewarding field, and this is essential. However, what these initiatives do not yet address is how to retain that talent over the long run. How do we continue to develop a professionally and materially rewarding career path for teachers who have dedicated their lives to teaching for the past 15, 20, or 25 years? How do we support teachers who do not have a desire to become an administrator or rise to a district position, but rather wish to stay in the classroom because it is what they are good at, what they love, and what feeds their souls? How do we reward those reliable, hardworking teachers who have stayed with the county and their students through every up and down? Beyond the classroom, these teachers are school leaders, mentors, and advocates. These experienced teachers are go-tos for covering classes when colleagues are out during shortages, giving up their planning period 2 to 3 times a week. They serve as the foundation of schools around the county, a constant students and families can depend on amidst the change and turnover. These teachers are the ones who encourage and support new teachers, helping them stay in education. These are the ones who keep and have it kept together in the midst of chaos. These teachers are the very backbone of Greenville County, and we must act to retain them. By speaking today and asking you to consider that pay raise in the budget proposal, I am asking you to show these teachers that they are valued, that they are respected, and that we need them and our children need them. Speaking as a parent with 2 girls in Greenville County schools myself, I know that my children certainly need them, and as a conscientious citizen and taxpayer, I am happy to do whatever it takes to keep them. In the meantime, enjoy your children this summer, and know that come August, we will be excited to see them, ready to welcome them back, and get started on helping them prepare for their bright future. Thank you so much for your service to our community and for your time this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Uria. Next speaker is Caitlin Scott.
Hello, my name is Caitlin Scott. I spoke here in April to share my gratitude for the way that you guys advocated for pay raises for all employees, and I just wanted to revisit those thoughts tonight as you're reviewing the budget. As both a taxpayer and as your employee, I feel that a tax increase is minimal compared to the extreme conditions resulting from the teacher shortage. I wanted to share my personal experience with this tonight. This year, my school operated with about 35% of our staff absent on a fairly regular basis, and we even had multiple days where 54% of our staff were present. 2 of our teachers completely left the profession in December, and we lost another one in April. I covered classes almost every single day this school year, and I even became the teacher of record for 3 classes outside of my certified content area because we just didn't have enough certified teachers or subs. My job as an instructional coach should focus on providing the support that's so crucial for teacher success and retention, but instead my focus is often diverted to ensure that the school can just function at a very basic level. Employees all across our district are having experiences just like mine, and so far all evidence is suggesting that things are only getting worse. Please approve the proposed budget, even if it requires a mill increase. Those of us who are staying and carrying the load would see that action and feel valued. We're caught in a cycle right now where our shortage of employees has created conditions that make it difficult to recruit and retain more employees. The long-term consequences of that cycle are far more severe than a 4.5 mil increase. Any small steps that we can take toward attracting more people to our profession will improve conditions for all of us, especially for our students. Thank you as always for the hard work that you do. I truly appreciate you and the continued support of our teachers and our staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. Next speaker is Cecilia Ho.
Hi, good evening. My name is Cecilia. I'm happy to be here and share my view again. Earlier in May 24th, I have sent an email regarding to the ARMS expansions that we have some concern about it, and wondering if there's a possibility to keeping ARMS at the Fine Arts Center without moving to Lee, while still expanding to other 2 locations. The one thing that I'm not sure if you are aware that we have 4 ARM teachers already resigned because of this, and one of them is the current 2021 and 22 District Teacher of the Year. So we are sad that they are leaving because they are not unable to stay at the ARMS facility to offer the best program for all the students, or at least some of the students, while the other student at the North and South location we're going to add, they will still having the opportunity to be having the gifted program. So anyway, based on the budget part I was trying to look at. So we have the $106,000 to be covered 5 years with 25 new ARMS instructor in the 3 location. I am wondering that is it the same based on what currently now we have each instructor going to offer 2 elementary school and 2 middle school classes. So with that as a total, there will be 100 classes a year for 3 locations to be run, and for 5 years, which will be times 5. With that budget is that only each class will only get $200 to cover all the costs and expense. So with that cost, will they also have the upgrade that the district will kind of administrator thinking to when they add the new location will have be able to upgrade the dance floor, the black box theater, all the equipment, or all the art supplies that can be covered with that the same budget? That was my one question. And the other question that lead me to all other art teacher who currently receive 0 funding directly from the district. They got $275 each year from the state to cover all the student art. So which means the whole school of the art student who taking art that's what they can get. So they can relied on funding on their own, get sponsored from parents in order to cover all their art. So this is what I just comparing with what I can see. We have the marching band uniform that they will cover 50,000, and which I have my son is also in marching band right now. They get to wear the uniform only maybe 5 times when they go for performance. But for our students, they are doing art every day in the school for the whole year. So I was trying to figure out like what's the differences and how is it not quite equal and be fair. Sorry, my English is not as good, but I'm trying my best to explain. Sorry.
Thank you, Ms. Ho. Next speaker is Olivia Miller.
Good evening. My name is Olivia Miller, and I will be a junior next year at J.L. Mann High School. I'm a product of Greenville County Schools and its incredible teachers. I understand that a raise for teachers is being considered in the budget proposal, and I think that this is a critical change that must take place in order for students to continue to receive quality education and to feel comfortable with the teachers who are passionate about what they do every day. I have grown up with both of my parents and a step-parent who are teachers, and I'm directly affected by a teacher's salary. My father was a music teacher for 12 years in a school in the county and was one of the teachers who ended up leaving education for a new career that could offer raises and promotions. That really brought to light to me how his passion for music and teaching the younger generation fizzled out because of the low pay, long hours, and the stress that he endured. My mom, on the other hand, has stuck it out for 15 years now, and she deserves so much more. She spends endless hours staying after school and arriving at school early to do all that she can for her students. Watching her do what she loves makes my family and I so happy for her, but I really think that she and all teachers should be compensated highly for it. Being a student in this county and being raised by teachers has given me a unique viewpoint and helped me understand the importance of compensating teachers for all the time and energy that they give to this profession. I believe teachers deserve the best because they give us their best. I am able to stand here and speak today because of my teachers. Thank you for your time and for supporting all teachers and students.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. That concludes our speaker, and thank every one of you for being here. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn this public hearing. Have a motion. Is there a second? Have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion say aye. All opposed say no. Motion carries. This hearing is adjourned. We will reconvene at 6:30. Thank you. Good evening again. Welcome to our second reading of the fiscal year 23 general fund budget. Dr. Royster.
Thank you, Mr. Meek. I want to spend just a few minutes reviewing the budget proposal that you have before you tonight. The expenses have not changed since the first reading. The revenue upon which we based this budget proposal has not changed since first reading, though we do have the, you know what I believe what I'm referencing is when I say it this way, what I reference, the between numbers. We now know, gone to conference committee, what would be the best case and what would be the worst case scenario. We also know that the legislature does not plan to reconvene until 15 June, and they may or may not address the budget that day. It could be later that week or could be later in the month. And I believe, Ms. Horton, if I've kept up with this correctly, the conference committee has been appointed, but a first meeting of the conference committee has not yet been set, or was it set today?
It was a brief meeting a couple of weeks ago, but I have not seen that they've scheduled another meeting yet.
Okay, thank you. So as a little bit of a refresher from what we talked about in the previous presentations, look at where we invest our resources. The general fund, which is the driving budget of the school district, the budget we're here to talk about tonight, we spend $661.9, right at $662 million on salary and benefits. We are a people-driven organization. Everything that we do is for people. It is primarily done with people and by people. The total amount of all of our other expenditures in the general fund, utilities, insurance, supplies, small equipment, all of those sorts of things only adds up to $60 million. You've all seen these numbers before and seen them expressed in a number of different ways. When you look at the people, that very large person to the left are teachers and classroom aides. Then in descending order, you see instructional support personnel, operations people at the school level, custodians, people like that, employees like that, school administrators, school clerical, district employees, and the very last number is really district leadership. Those are people with titles of director and above. Those are the management and leadership people of the district. So you can see the investment is heavily in people, and it is absolutely, extremely heavily weighted to classroom teachers and aides in the classroom. Another way to look at it is this way, as far as looking at the non-salary expenditure in this pie chart. You all have seen this before, and it shows the $60 million that we spend in non-salary, primarily spent in fixed costs, which is 40%, maintenance support at 21%, in all the other areas. But as you can see by the smaller pie, you see what all that non-salary expense equates to as part of the whole. It's the blue slice out of the orange pie to the right. That simply describes what each of those categories represents. So fixed costs, those are utilities, liability toward insurance, annual software maintenance contracts, cellular wireless fees, things of that nature. Just an appendix basically that tells you what those expenditures constitute. Now you saw our investments as how we heavily invest in personnel. We have investments then in the things to operate the district. What have been the results of your investments in the last 10 years? We've moved from number 27 to number 2 in the teacher schedule average pay compared to all other South Carolina school districts. 10 years, gone from number 27 to number 2. We've increased the base teacher salary from $33,259 to $42,500. With your all's approval several years ago, we became the first school district in the state to cross the threshold of $40,000 for new teachers. We've added 10 steps to the GCS teacher salary schedule, ensuring that teachers, no matter their number of years' experience, receive a step increase each year. We reduced the student-teacher ratios across all grades, increased bus driver salaries, having over that period of time increased bus driver starting pay by nearly 48%. Ensured elementary teacher planning time daily, initiated the Greenville Alternative Teacher Education Program, and it has increased 430% in 5 years. Opened 3 new schools and increased student capacity at 6 other locations. Now, building those buildings didn't come from this fund, but staffing those buildings did come from these funds. And anytime you choose to open a new school site, there are unduplicated new personnel costs. They may range anywhere from $400,000 to $750,000. Maintained teachers when state funding ended for reduced class size and gifted programs. Maintained teachers and aides when state funding ended for English as a second language. Decreased multilingual student-teacher ratio, or as referenced in the previous bullet point, ESOL student-teacher ratio, from 138 to 1 to 80 to 1. Established elementary reading interventionist positions and expanded to meet data-driven needs. Flex allocation for instructional needs for every school. Relocated special ed classes to home-based schools, which caused the need to add additional special education teachers and classes, but allowed students to be in the school their siblings would be zoned to attend. Full-time athletic director at every high school, and added ongoing funding for band and strings instruments. Additional assistant director supplements for instrumental music based on the number of participants. Increased academic athletic supplements. Decreased the school counselor ratio at middle and high schools from 351 to 251, putting it among the lowest in the nation and what the National Association recommends for counselors. Increased clerical support for all schools, established an employee assistance program, established security zone patrols for schools that do not have school resource officers, targeted increases for employee work groups with critical shortages, added interventionists, before and after school tutoring, credit recovery labs, expanded summer school, and more. New education funding. Not going to spend a lot of time on this, but as you all know, we've covered this in the workshop and in the first reading. The House this year initiated a proposed dramatic change to school funding from an EFA-based funding, which was based on the students and the type of students served, the number and the type, to one driven by a theoretical pupil-teacher ratio of 11 to 1. Also note that that was the beginning of the misconception to move those districts that were below or at the state minimum, those below the other districts, to a $4,000 increase. The Senate version, it's taken a blend of the EFA, maintaining that, as it's referenced in the first bullet in EIA funding, as a stake in the ground, and then converted new money to this theoretical pupil-teacher ratio formula. That's less important than the results of it. Now, this is simply a review. You've seen this before. These are the changed weightings. Although we're moving, apparently, by the decisions of the legislature, from a weighted pupil unit primary source of funding to this is used to temper the 11 to 1 teacher ratio. So you take your weighted pupil units and use that to calculate your 11 to 1 pupil teacher ratio. But you see some of the changes in the weighted pupil units that now are continuing to help drive funding. And one to look at was, for example, the current funding allows a weighting of 1.29 for career and technical ed students. The House version had no weighting for those students. The Senate version goes to 1.2. career and technical ed students are the second most expensive student we have to educate in general terms. Special ed students are the most expensive per pupil to educate. You see the other changes there and the differences between the House and the Senate version. Again, simply a look back at what we've already talked about. All right, I mentioned to you we now have the new between numbers. The number to the right is the Senate version. The number to the left, which is a little shy of $10 million more, is the revised House version. It has now been revised, Julie, 3 times. In this they had the initial, the 19 to us, then they had the 30 to us, Robin, then it went to 27, and then it went down 2 more. So this is the 3rd revision. Now, as a reminder, we based, as we have always done, the latest information, but the one that has the least positive impact to us. Because we don't want to be in a position where we've budgeted more than the revenue provides. So the budget that you received at first reading, the one you have before you tonight, is based on the number to the right. The Senate version, which is the lower of the 2. All right. The Senate version puts us $7 million short of being fully funded in our budget, which results in our recommendation in our budget for a millage increase to the now reduced millage due to reassessment. We'll talk about that in just a minute. Now that budget to the left, if by some action of that conference committee that's then accepted by the full legislature, they should fully take the House version instead of the Senate version, we'd actually be $2.2 million to the good. It's unlikely they will adopt the House version, but they could reach a version somewhere in between the 2. But what we present to you tonight is based on what we believe with high certainty would be the worst case scenario, and that's the Senate version. So what's the impact that $7 million? All right, as we've talked about before, this is a reassessment year. In a reassessment year, the way the law is written, all property in the county has to be reassessed at a new value. If you own that property 5 years ago and you own it today, the value of that reassessment is capped at 15%. So the value of your property for tax purposes cannot go above 15%. Now, generally speaking, we're talking about owner-occupied houses for which we receive no operating revenue. But it also applies to vehicles. We'll talk about that in just a minute. That's a far lesser amount. All right, so your property's reassessed. Your home goes up in value. It is the only taxable property that we receive revenue from on the debt service side that goes up in value. On the operating side, we receive no operating local taxes from it. The county does. If you live in the city does. So for your county or city tax purposes, it's the only piece of personal property you own that goes up in value, unless you've got some real unusual situation with your house. It goes up in value. All other personal property depreciates in value from one year to the next. All right, in a reassessment year, can't go up more than 15%. No taxing entity can realize a windfall from reassessment. So even though it went up, your millage, if you're a taxing entity, your millage is rolled back by the auditor. It was communicated to us in October that the district's operating millage would be rolled back by 7.6 mills. That's a 5% reduction. All right, so it goes down 5%. This is also going to be true for the millage applied to business and industrial property and to personal property, cars, boats, motorcycles, trucks, personal property. Going to go down 5%. Going to go from 150.8 mils to 143.2 mils. What we recommend in our budget is to reduce that decrease by adding back 4.5. So approving this tax increase just in general terms results in a 2% decrease instead of a 5% decrease. You're reducing the amount of the reduction. You're still below the previous millage rate. So what does that look like to somebody? All right, you know, we use 3 different cars, 2 cars and a truck. You all always ask us for what's the tax value of something. All right, well, we determine that by looking at the 3 most popular purchased vehicles. Ford F-150 pickup, Honda Accord, and what's the other one, Robin?
Toyota Camry.
A Toyota Camry. We also look at a national database source for what is the average age of a vehicle that people own. The average age of a car the average person owns. It's a 2010 model. All right, so there's this year's example, a 2010 Honda Accord. The 21 tax on it would be $28.65. The 22 tax on it will drop to $25.78, absent a millage change from this body. If you approve the millage increase or the reduced decrease, which is the other way to look at it, the taxable cost to the owner of that 2010 Honda goes from $28.65 to $25.26 instead of going to $25.78. Still less than they paid the year before. Now you see the little note there at the bottom. If your tag is renewed after December, that cost will go down even more because in December, using a national database, they will value used cars again, and it'll go down. Even though we're in a market right now where used cars are worth more, the law in South Carolina does not allow them to be taxed more than 95% of what they were taxed the year before. The tax bill, not the value, the tax bill. All right, all right, so you're going to pay less taxes on your car. All right, who will pay additional taxes? All right, if you're an individual. Now, we got personal property. We're picking just an example out of that, but it would be car, truck, motorcycle, boat, airplane if you got one. We didn't put a little airplane up there, but all right. So it applies equally to each of those. If you bought a new or newer car, all right, same would be true of a motorcycle. You had a motorcycle, you bought a new one or a newer one. All right, you own 2 cars and you buy a third one. Well, you own a car you didn't own before. You're going to pay taxes on that third car. Just like if you buy a new or newer one, a new one you're certainly going to pay more taxes on. A newer one depends on how much newer it is. A second home, not a rental house, a second home. Because that is the only home an owner can occupy at any point in the year for which we get taxes. You know, if you own 2 homes, you own a house out here somewhere in the subdivision, and you own one on the lake or up in the mountains, and you don't rent that out to people, it's literally a second home, you do pay school operating taxes on one of them. You have to pick which one. And you pay that at a different rate. but we do get taxes on your second home, not on your first home. And it would have to be a second home here in Greenville County. All right, that's individuals. A business. All right. Small business generally not going to have a negotiated fee load, though we have seen in recent years where small businesses are going in these multi-county parks. So in that case, they do. If you're a business or an industry, who might pay an additional tax? All right, if you had a building and you bought a second building, well, you didn't have that second building before, you're going to pay taxes on it that you didn't pay before. Let's say you added equipment. Let's say you had a business that you delivered things. You had 2 trucks, you bought a third one. You're going to pay taxes on that third truck. It's not a replacement, it's a third truck. Replacement equipment, maybe. Depending on how you choose to depreciate that equipment for tax purposes. So there's a tractor up there. If that's a $50,000 tractor, dependent on the way you depreciate it, you could depreciate the value of that tractor down to $5,000 in the first year you owned it. You're going to pay taxes on $5,000, not on the $50,000 that you actually paid for. That's if you accelerate the depreciation. That's for you and your accountant to figure out. You can straight line depreciate it over probably 27 years for a building. For equipment, same.
Equipment depends. It's a 7-year
7 line,
depreciation.
straight line, which means you take equal depreciation every year if you want to. I'm not sure why you'd want to do that, but so you could pay more. So if you go back and look at it, this is a very, very minimal impact to very few, number one, very few individuals. And then a very minimal impact to a small business or an industry unless they're expanding or adding a lot of equipment, which would be a byproduct of expanding. So that, and I don't think we often spend enough time really looking at who does this land on and how does it land. So we're fortunate we're in a growth community where we have more people coming in. So we got more people coming in and registering a car or cars or trucks, or perhaps buying a second home, or they're moving their business here and it was not here before. Or maybe they're starting a new business. But this is one reason where you see all the growth around in the county, yet the value of a mill for operating purposes is a little over $1 million. All right, just a summary, 2-slide summary. What's in here? What are the major points of what's in this budget? A $2,000 increase to every cell on the teacher salary schedule. And based on what we're hearing from other school districts, and we included a lot of that information in what we sent out to you earlier, as to what other districts may be doing, what they've proposed, in some cases maybe even voted on, this keeps us in the place we're in. It keeps us at the top. The biggest jump we saw from any district was one was proposing $4,000 raise for all their teachers. It still put them below us because they were that far below us. Most of them that we're competitive with toward the top are in the $2,000 raise. A step for every teacher. The addition of a 1% 34th step for our most experienced teachers. All of the increase to the cells bringing our entry-level teacher salary to $44,566. A step increase for all eligible employees at a minimum of 3%. A 3% increase for all the employees that aren't eligible for a step. We have a lot of people, our step schedules for employees other than teachers are far shorter than the teacher step schedule. I think the largest one of them maybe has 13 steps on it. So 3% for everyone else. A minimum entry-level pay for any district job of $15 per hour. That is a significant step forward for our lowest wage positions. I believe the entry now is $12.93, Robin. Further compression of bus driver schedule to 2 rates. That compression may not sound like a good thing, but it is a good thing. It gets the drivers to more money quicker. So 2 rates, $19 an hour and $21.26 an hour for bus drivers. Ability to address internal inequities of principal pay and external competitive system principal pay. First step of a proposed multi-step process to decrease student to counselor ratio, excuse me, at elementary level to 400:1. Personnel for growth to meet the estimated increase of 1,200 students. Funding to meet the required health and retirement employer contribution. Expansion of the ARMS program, and funding to further enhance school security. Those are the major things. I'm not going to go through all of them, but then the slides that follow, it lists every item that's added to the general fund budget. So many of them are far smaller in dollar amount and impact to the budget. So we're not going to go through each one of them, but you see them there, numbered 1 through 47. Not numbered in order of importance, just numbered in to keep track of the actual number. Mr. Meek, that concludes the administration's presentation. I'll be glad to answer any questions the board may have.
Thank you, Dr. Royster. Before we go to questions, I just want to mention that you may know a couple of board members not here. Ms. LaVentas Wells couldn't make it. She had a prior commitment. Mrs. Bush has pneumonia, so she couldn't make it tonight either. So wish her well. Mr. Sailors, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Royster, funding to meet the required health and retirement contribution. What's the increase on that this year?
Ms. Stack?
18.1%.
So it's 18.1% increase that the state is saying we need to pony up for a program that they manage, correct?
Yes.
Yes, sir. It's a program determined by the state, and the dollar amount hits right about $13 million of the two combined.
Okay, and what was the increase in last year's budget? Do you remember?
0.62%.
Let's just say for conversation piece,
It was minimal.
last year's increase was 1% roughly, and this year's is 18.1. Okay.
We're now basically at 42 cents for every dollar of salary.
Mm-hmm.
Our benefits package is 42 cents for every dollar of salary. Employer cost. Employees are also paying towards that, but there is no increase this year, and there was not last year to employees. Now, we do not know if there'll be a change in their copay. We've not been informed of that, which is an indirect way that health cost increases for employees.
Okay, thank you. Going back to the minimum entry-level pay for district to 15 an hour, do we have any idea roughly how many employees that would affect currently? Okay, you can send that in a memo. I'm okay, that's fine. Doug, normally we have a motion to forego the third reading and pass a budget based on the second reading. Is that still the process?
No, sir. You all changed your policy a few years ago, which does not require you to waive policy to do that.
Okay.
The policy now assumes adoption on second reading. You can move it to a third reading, but it allows for adoption at second reading.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that the budget as presented be approved. I'm making a motion to approve the administration's recommendation.
Fiscal year 23 general fund budget.
Yes, sir.
Have a motion, is there a second? Second. Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the budget? Dr. Stiles.
I'd like to just make a few comments. First, I'd like to say, as a former principal, I have some strong thoughts about this topic. And one thing I know about the success of a school is contingent on teachers. Teachers are the heart and soul of the school. They are our success. And teachers work extremely hard in a very stressful job. It's become more stressful through the years. And I feel we have a responsibility as a board to support them to the fullest. As a principal, I have witnessed teachers with struggles financially just because the salary is not competitive with other jobs that have like education. And that's really sad to me. That's been sad to me for many, many years. Teaching is truly a selfless profession. So I would just like to say to my constituents that I support teachers, and I feel like if we want our community to do well, if we want our children to succeed, we have to support our teachers, and we have to pay them for the job that they do every day. And I'd also like to say that I'm really happy that this is in the budget. I think it's a great thing. I'd like to even see even more for the teachers. But I'm also very happy to see that we've included all of our employees, that we have a minimum, that we're proposing a minimum pay of $15 per hour for all of our employees. I think that makes a great statement. I think that's leading the way for other districts. And I think it says to our employees, we care about you, we support you. And also, when Dr. Royster, as you shared the summary, the impact is very minimal to others. And so if it were not minimal, I might have to think about that a little more, but based on the facts and the way it is, I would just like to say that I fully support this budget and the increase for teachers, and just honored to make these comments on behalf of teachers. And one other thing, Mr. Meeks, if I may, Linda Leventis Wells asked me to read a statement tonight because she is not here. If I may read that, would that
Go ahead.
This is from Miss Linda Leventis Wells. I have a conflict with tonight's meeting, which was scheduled months ago. I am for our teachers and for all those who serve our children in all areas, such as food service, custodial, teachers, aides, etc. Before I vote on our budget, I feel it's important to know exactly what the state will approve. Therefore, I would recommend that we have a third reading of the FY23 general fund budget before voting on a millage increase of 4.5 mils. It's a very difficult time for businesses, some which have closed their doors, and the cost of living is a struggle for many. Thank you, Mrs. Wells.
Thank you, Dr. Stiles. Ms. Goodwin-Caldwell.
Okay, like I've said, since I've been on the school board, the teaching profession, educators, should be the highest paid profession ever. I mean, if you think about it, when you came through school, you remember that person that had impact on you. And I wish that we, it was higher paid than sports, all of that. But I wanted to ask about make a statement about the millage. If we don't use it, we lose it, right?
That is correct. You're actually losing some this year, but you still have, Robin, total, how much in reserve?
18.2 mils if this budget is passed.
So what we're using this year is coming from previous years. This is not what they gave us for this year, correct?
That is correct, and it is, I believe, an amount less than what was provided by the state this year. When you look at population growth and inflation, they give us a millage calculation, and that was for how many mills?
9 mils.
So it's half what is calculated to be needed to offset inflation and growth.
I'm always asked the question by, from a county councilman, why y'all always raising taxes? But the Act 388, which was enacted by the legislators, they give us so many millage per year for us to use, correct? So we have to.
It was part of the entire revamping of the tax system, which removed owner-occupied property for operating purposes for school districts. So if some other governing body in South Carolina, a city, a county, or if it's a public service district that has their own taxing authority, if any of those are asking about the need to raise millage from a school district standpoint, what is true for them is not true for us. They receive taxes on owner-occupied homes, which of all these items that are taxed, it's the only one that appreciates in value every year. So every year they get, windfall's not the correct term, but they get the benefit of the increased value of owner-occupied homes, which is the only taxable property that this is in existence one year and is taxed the next year and goes up in value. All the rest of these things go down in value. All business property goes down in value because it's depreciated. All personal property goes down in value because it too depreciates.
So looking at what you have in here, the millage that they allowed for this coming year is 9.0, and we're not using that. So the amount
we're asking you to use half that. Let's go and call it.
Use 4.5.
Yes, ma'am.
Of that. Now on one of these sheets, I didn't see where TIF was in the revenue. Why is that?
The TIF has finally, the last one has expired. So where you will see the revenue from what previously was a TIF, it would be in property tax revenue. It's folded in there because the TIFs are now all expired. Last one expired during this year, Robin?
September.
So we no longer have that.
No, they're regular tax collections at the normal rate, following these same rules we talked about earlier.
Okay, when Mr. Sellers was talking about the retirement, Robin, do you know what the pre-pandemic was? I know it went from a 0.62% last year to 18.1% this year. Was it so low because we had the pandemic, the 0.62? Do you know what it was pre-pandemic?
That was during the continuing resolution from the state in FY21. So that's why it was low in FY21.
Okay. Now, that's all I have about that, but I wanted to ask Burke, when I see down here on one of the questions that was asked about the principal salary adjustments, I see that we have to do a lot of additional steps for principals. Do you have the breakdown as to what, which ones of these principals, whether it was high, middle, or elementary school that had to have 5 additional step increases, or was it across the board?
Well, it's every principal in this district except the ones hired last year. The year we're in, correct, Robin? Is picking up 1 or more steps, every principal. If the longer they've been here, the more steps they're picking up. And I believe we sent a list of, there's this many that are getting 5, this many 4. It doesn't have anything to do with whether you're elementary, middle, or high. It has to do with how long you've been a principal and how many years we didn't give them a step increase.
Okay.
It catches them up and puts them where they should be based on how many years they've been a principal.
Okay, and one more question. Under the categories in the budget, I see where you list the amounts for some of the services under the 23 budget, no, 21-22 budget, but you don't have under the first one, the cake supplies, you don't have the amount listed there. That's on page 1 and 2 from the work session. You look at the work session, down at the bottom of page 1 and up on page 2, it has the amounts listed for the rest of them, but it doesn't for that first one on 22-23 budget.
Ms. Goodwin-Caldwell, that's because it would be at least that same amount plus whatever additional students come to us, because that's a per student, per class allocation.
So is that why you have that plus additional 20,000
yes.
requested?
Well, the 20,000 is what's in budget, but the base would increase based on the number of students that come to us in that category. So if we had an additional 100 students show up, based on that per student, per class allocation, they would get that much more. And we just don't know how many additional students we would have. But it's in addition to that base. It wouldn't go down, it only goes up.
Okay. I think that, wait a minute. One more question, Bert, on the assistant principal's pay. I mean, getting extra days. With the high school APs, does that include the career centers?
Yes.
It does? Okay, and so is this gonna be, it's optional?
It is not
This
optional.
year?
It is optional in year 1 if people need to adjust their schedules.
Which is this summer, because people
Well,
have,
could be going into next summer too. So for the 22-23 school year, so beginning July 1, ending June 30th. So that's
okay,
two,
so
really, it's 2 summers.
okay,
Then the expectation is 23-24, they've made whatever adjustments they need to be able to work the required days. But they have a
23-24.
full year to make that adjustment.
okay. That's all I have, thank you.
Thank you,
Yes,
Ms.
ma'am.
Goodwin Caldwell. Ms. Wells.
So one question that could arise, you know, and I'll say I've had this date on my calendar for months because I think it's always just amazing to sit and go through what we've spent over the last 10 years, as you always lay out for us, so we can understand what the trend is, and then to see what we've accomplished. And then what an amazing feat it is to run a district this size with this budget. So I'm appreciative of all the detail that you give us. So if you look at the Senate and House version and where they are, and we've considered worst case, tell me what happens. What are your thoughts if it comes back and it's this is such a weird twist, because usually the Senate gives us more money than the House every year. So if it turns out that we get what the House is proposed, so we're $10 million to the good from this budget, tell me about that impact.
If that were to happen, now I think the odds of that are not real good. I didn't look to see how overcast it was when I came in here. The odds of lightning striking out there might be better right now. I'm not sure that's going to happen, but a couple of things could happen. Let's say it was exactly as you described it. All of a sudden, we're $10 million to the good, which means you don't have the $7 million hole, and you got an extra $2.3 million. Then you could, if you desired to do so, amend your budget in August. We're required to submit the millage to the auditor before the end of August. Now, we need a budget way before then, because all these changes, the finance staff has to get loaded, it has to be correct, And starting July 1, everybody but the teachers, all the employees that work different schedules, 12 months, custodians, all these people, their pay gets calculated starting July 1. So we have to have their pay settled, and it's got to be loaded in. They got to run tests to make sure it's processed properly. Teacher pay doesn't happen until a little bit later on. You also want to make available to all the departments and the schools their supply money, that sort of thing. So there's good reason we need to get this thing locked down by June, mid-June, no later than where they've got a good 2 weeks. But you don't communicate your millage increase to the auditor until August, even though you may approve it tonight. You could go back and reduce that. You also need to consider, and we would ask that you consider, if it was some number short of $10 million. You may want to consider applying that towards the fund balance that we have still in the budget to the tune of $16 million. So we're relying on non-recurring to fund recurring costs, but it's a planned thing. We plan to reduce our dependence in that over time. It may mean a partial tax increase at some point to offset it, but by doing it over time, particularly in that 5-year interval before you have reassessment again, you're going to benefit from some growth in the millage value. We also have, how much in the indirect costs from ESSER? 3 million, 3.2?
4 million. Just a second.
You'll see it as a separate line item in your budget. We always have indirect costs from federal programs. A percentage we're allowed to remove from that program to cover overhead. The indirect cost allowed for ESSER is a lot higher percentage than for others, but it terminates in FY24, and it's currently how much, Robin?
3.2 million.
So there's another 3.2 on top of the 16. So we would advise, if we were at that point in August, that you look seriously at how much should you commit to that. But I said all that simply to say you can adjust the millage amount in the month of August if you're provided this additional state revenue without affecting the ability to load the budget, pay people in a timely manner. And again, when you get into August and you look at that first 2 weeks, you got to get the teacher pay right so that their initial pay for the new year is correct. Our returning teachers, the pay they're drawing this summer is pay they've already earned this year. And their new pay doesn't kick in until the first of next year.
Well, I wanted you to get there on the fund balance piece that we're using to fill the hole, because I think there is this false sense that, well, gosh, we could get there and not have to have millage increase. But the fact that we're doing that, we're balancing our budget by using fund balance. Certainly that fund balance, as we've seen on the debt service side with our facilities, all the new schools we're having to add now because growth and what that potential impact looks like. There are a lot of other uses that we might need that fund balance for as well.
Well, to your point, the utilization of fund balance for non-recurring items like construction helps you to avoid millage increases on the debt service side.
Okay. So that's helpful. A couple of specific items. We've got 7.5 and 2.1 million in this replacing special revenue funds for students at risk of school failure, which is 104 FTEs, and then aid to districts that are being moved out of the EIA funds, which they typically say, here's the amount, and we're giving you 100% of that. And now they're saying we're not gonna pay that out of EIA anymore. And so now, here's the calculated amount, and we're gonna give you 75% of it, right?
Well, they're gonna give us 75% calculated on a theoretical pupil-teacher ratio of 11:1 times our weighted pupil units. And our share, I think on the new calculations, we actually get 76%, but the theoretical is 75, but I think we're actually a 76% district.
So when they're making that adjustment, the special revenue funds typically come with a lot of very specific strings attached to those 104 FTEs, for instance. Are they giving us latitude in removing those requirements along with that?
Another way to look at it is you're going to get about 3/4 of the amount you got, but they did remove the restrictions. But see, all of our students at risk of school failure, they're used on direct instruction. So they're basically teaching positions. And the
Categories of those are 4-year-old kindergarten,
yep.
Midland High School alternative programs, elementary reading interventionists. Those aren't exactly extras that we don't really.
No, they are direct teaching of students. Yep.
At-risk students, right? So, and then I guess on the others, the 2.1 million in the aid to districts, that seemed to not be as much direct instruction, right? 'Cause that's professional development.
That is primarily professional development, and it's probably the largest professional development funding that we have. Right, Stephanie? It's the bulk of our professional development funding.
That's what I was going to ask. As a percentage of our professional development, is that how we're funding most of our professional development?
Yes. Now, we're funding some out of Title II, and there's some others that are designated for specific purposes. But that's the money that we allocate out to schools for staff development from school level comes out of that, and some of the money that we spend at the district level comes out of that.
So then two more things that are a little bit smaller and kind of in the weeds, but I wanted to ask about. We have 2 FTEs added for our school psychologist. And that's going to get us to a ratio, I'm assuming with the growth we're projecting, of 1 school psychologist for every 2,154 students.
Yes.
So is this one of those things where do we want to be with that number? Because that seems really high given the need for, evaluation and testing and the growth we have in the special needs population.
I'm gonna let Tracy speak directly to that, but Ms. Hogan?
And I guess, Ms. Hogan, as you're kind of getting to where you can speak,
I think the closest microphone's up here on this corner.
I'm wondering, do we have enough so that students are getting seen, evaluated, served quickly enough and often enough with this? Or do we still have a ways to go even with what we're adding?
We still have a little ways to go. We had written a long-range plan so that we could add, I have to get the numbers here in front of me, that would put it down to the 2,282 to 1 to 2,154 to 1. But if you recall, we'd written a 5-year plan, and we were asking for how many we thought we could get, and we take interns every year, and those are the first folks that we interviewed to hire. But we certainly are using our school psychologists not just for evaluation any longer. We are using them for counseling services. They're a big part of our on-track system and all the things that you've discussed or we're talking about when you're talking about at-risk and intervention too. So, yes, we always want that number to be lower, so we still have a little ways to go in that, but we're making great strides in that, and we're not really having any issues to contract anymore. We used to have to do that a lot more, but now that we are being able to get a pipeline of interns come and work with us, then they want to stay with us, so we're able to fill those positions a lot better now.
Okay, and so maybe that's why we're looking at 2, so that we can build the capacity appropriately.
Correct.
Because I think you could put a number there and you wouldn't be able to hire them. I don't know what that number is, but we could put a number in there. We wish it wouldn't find that many.
We try to be realistic, yes, sir.
Okay, all right, thank you. And then the last thing, just to clarify, for the ARMS program expansion, the $106,000 in this budget is specifically for additional instruction for teachers. We don't believe that's not the dollar value we'll need, but
we have
additional funds.
Yeah, we have some facility changes we need to make that we can make out of model money, out of facilities money.
Right.
There may be some supply and equipment acquisitions we need to make, but that 100,000 people, and it's basically to set that north and south location and to make sure there are 2 people there. Now, as we expand and roll out 5 areas, Bradley, we ultimately have 6 people, but as we go, whether it's next year, the following year, whatever, you pick up one per each location. But you start with two because you don't really want just one person there with that group of students in the building.
What is the amount with the revenue we project? It's the 106 plus what that we're projecting we're going to pick up from the additional student.
We didn't do it that way because they have continually changed the weighted pupil unit formula. But we think that the further rollout will be less expensive because of that very thing. We should pick up revenue by having more identified GT students being served, because we have students that are now identified that aren't being served. It's just hard to say what the amount would be, but it could allow us to accelerate the expansion more quickly, or it could allow us to expand at a lesser cost, or maybe even offset the cost completely.
And this is specific to the instruction. We have money in the debt service, the capital budget, that will help us with facility upgrades that are needed to be sure we have a
I
quality.
think the biggest facility upgrade is sprung dance floor. Did I get that right, Brandon? Now, he can explain what that means. I thought all you needed was a hardwood floor, but you need a sprung hardwood floor.
All right, okay. Well, thank you. I don't ascribe very often to those numbers that the state gives us every year to say this is our millage we have, because in the 12 years that you've kind of been reporting these things to us, our student growth has not tracked their population growth necessarily. But given the pressure, the economic pressure there is, and the burden that our students and teachers, our students are facing, that then kind of translates on the backs of the teachers. I think it's really important to be aggressive, like we have been for several years, in trying to raise those teacher salaries. So I appreciate the hard work on the budget, the conservative nature of how we go about the process, and the fact that we have a great plan. Thank you.
Ms. Wells, Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If we could just go back a couple of slides to the operating millage slide, I just want to make sure that I am seeing here what I understand to be true.
This one, Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Okay.
So if we approve the increase in millage of 4.5 mils, the 2023 millage rate will still be less than it was in 2021.
Yes, sir.
And so as we talk about the impact of increasing millage, we're still actually producing a budget with a lower millage rate than we had 2 years ago, even though our expenses have gone up.
Right, and I think that should say the 22 millage.
And then if we go to the next slide with the car, from 2021 to 2022, car owners saw a decrease in what they paid in property taxes for school operations. And even with this increase in the millage, car owners are going to see another decrease in what they pay in property taxes for their vehicle operations, using this 2010 Honda Accord as its example.
At the end of the day, if you approve this millage increase, they will still pay less than they were paying.
So
they'll pay $25.26 instead of $28.65.
To me, that's important because, the few emails I got today were talking about how seniors can't afford to pay more in their taxes. But as you look at 2021 to 2022 to 2023, we're actually producing a budget that charges them less in their taxes than they did the year prior, unless they got a new car this year.
Unless they bought a new or newer car, or they own 2 cars and bought a third, or 1 car and bought a second.
I just think that's so important because I think what Dr. Stiles talked about earlier is really what is, to me, at the core of what this budget reflects as far as our priorities are. I think number one, increasing the base pay for all of our employees to $15 an hour is not only an equitable thing to do, but it is a smart thing to do as one of the largest employers in this county. Because as people are choosing whether to work at a gas station or in fast food or work for this district, we've got to make sure that we are offering a competitive and fair wage for our people. And so I'm thankful for that. But the increase in teacher pay, even though the House and the Senate didn't fully fund it, I think is really important. And I appreciate this district for finding a way to do that. You know, earlier this past week, you know, I was at the Malden graduation and got to talk to several of the teacher cadets who have spent 2 years exploring thoughtfully whether or not they want to pursue a job in education. And they have so many options in front of them that they don't have to go into a classroom. And I think, you know, the days of hoping and praying that we can just create this job and floods of people will come to us just isn't, it's just not a reality. And we are competing with many more industries for these bright young graduates to come and work for us. And I think it's important that we are competitive with not only other districts, but with other industries that these students could work in. One of the students I talked to is debating whether to pursue a career in finance or a career where she can be a math teacher. And, you know, my mother did not have that as an option. She was good at math, and she was a female, and she went to Georgia Teacher College because that was the job that women who were good in math did. And I'm so thankful that this young lady has multiple options in front of her. And I want to make sure that she wants to teach for us. And I need for that job to be competitive when she gets out of Clemson in a few years and comes to fill one of the vacancies that we currently have. I look at this past year and I think about my own wife who is teaching and all of the extra burdens and responsibilities that we are putting on teachers every day, and to be able to at least honor them by giving them an increase in their pay beyond what the House and the Senate are willing to give to us, I think is just a really incredible thing. And so I'm thankful that this district was able to create a budget that honored all of those employees. So I'm happy to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Ms. Doolin.
Thank you. I'm glad that Ms. Leventis Wells sent a statement to be read. I feel sort of similar to her in that it seems irresponsible to adopt a budget when we don't know what the state's contribution will be. I wonder if we could approve it today with $1,000 teacher raises that we know we can afford on the low end with the state's contribution. And then if they adopt the House version and it comes back 10 million more, then we would have the funds for the second half of the raise. And like Dr. Royster said, we would have until August to consider a millage increase. So with not knowing how much the state is going to contribute, I'm just not really comfortable approving things today. I also understand we can't wait because all the hourly employees over the summer need to be paid on July 1st. So I just wonder if we can if we could consider that, just approving what we know we can afford right now, and then regrouping when we know what the state's contribution will be.
Ms. Doolin, we have a motion on the floor. That's what we have to consider at this point in time, unless you want to make an amendment to change it.
Then I'd like to make an amendment.
Okay. What's your amendment?
To approve the budget as presented, except for $1,000 teacher raises.
So you want to make a substitute motion instead of amending it? Is that what you're?
Yes, sir.
I think a substitute. Okay, repeat it one more time.
To approve the motion as presented with $1,000 increase for every teacher contingent on the state's contribution.
Okay, we have a substitute motion on the floor. Is there a second? Is there a second? Hearing none, your motion dies for lack of a second. Thank you. Okay, let's see who else I've had here. Miss Mosley.
Thanks, Mr. Meek. I've thought about this a great deal, and I want to first thank the administration for the very good explanation that you bring to the table about all of these numbers, what it means to our community, what it means to our teachers. Dr. Stiles said very eloquently what I have thought a lot about today, and I do believe that the teachers are at the heart of this. I really do. Mr. Lewis asked my question about the operating millage, so I will not take up time with that. I think I'm prepared to support this budget. Yeah.
Thank you. Any further questions? Mr. Suddeth, saving you for last, okay? Go ahead.
Dr. Royster, just a clarification for me. On the ARMS program, we're going to add 2 additional sites. Over 5 years, we're going to add 1 subject. Are we still going to continue to have a program at the Fine Arts Center?
We'll still have a central program that covers all the current areas, plus we're adding 1. Then the plan is next year to add a north and a south location in 1 subject, and then for each of the subsequent years add to that, so at the end of 5 years, we'll have 3 full programs, north, central, and south.
One of those programs will be the Fine Arts Center.
It will likely be at League Middle School, but it will serve the center portion of the county. Now, it'll serve the whole county until we get it fully rolled out north and south.
How much longer are we going to have the program at the Fine Arts Center?
It will likely move from there at the end of this year to League Middle School, which is the middle school for the arts.
So beginning next school year, we'll have 1 ARMS program at 1 middle school.
We'll have a full ARMS program at 1 middle school and 2 beginnings of ARMS programs at 2 others, north located and south located.
So that it is, I am correct when I say we will no longer have a program at the Fine Arts Center.
Not physically there, but we will still have a central program that covers all the current arts subjects that are taught in ARMS, elementary and middle school.
How would we compare with facility at the Fine Arts Center, the 2 facilities that we're going to have at these other 2 locations?
The 2 facilities at the other 2 locations would not rise to the level of the Fine Arts Center because they're not specifically designed or built for that purpose. But they can be adapted by putting in a dance floor, putting in, I think, mirrored walls in the dance studio, some bars in there. That's probably the greatest physical change for any of those, because when you go to a middle school, middle schools have choral music space, they have instrumental music space already.
These programs will be after school, correct, Dr. Royster?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
What are we spending $106,000 on?
On the people to teach in the other 2 locations.
People that teach presently in the Fine Arts Center?
No, sir. They would still teach in the central portion of the program.
Well, they will not be at the Fine Arts Center.
Unless they have some teaching assignment during the day there, they will be where the program's located, and that will likely be at League.
I know we've discussed and talked a good deal about the Orange program. And my problem or my question was, not where the program is,
Right.
but the quality of the program we have at that facility. So if we're going to take, I assume that at the Fine Arts Center, that is a very good location, has a lot of the amenities that we need for that particular program. Are we going to have the same thing at these schools that we moved it to?
Not to the same level at the Fine Arts Center, but remember the Fine Arts Center was built for senior high school students who, for many of them, their next step may be to actually earn their living in some performing arts arena. So, no, it won't be to the same level, but what it will also do is provide opportunity to utilize the Fine Arts Center for high school level students after their regular school day, which we currently are inhibited in being able to do that because it's full of elementary and middle school students in the afternoon.
We're moving the elementary students out of the Fine Arts Center so we can have the high school Fine Arts Center attend.
So they can expand what they do in the after school for high school age students, ultimately.
We know there's a great need for that.
Well, I would...
forget that. I was assuming that's a stupid question.
Well, as our population has grown, yes, sir, I think that's a safe assumption.
Okay. I just want to make sure I understand that when we say we're not going to be in the Fine Arts Center any longer, that's correct. We will not be in.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's that one. On the security enhancements.
Yes, sir.
That what we are spending here, we're spending $700,000.
Yes, sir.
I've been asked, how much is that going to contribute to the safety of our schools? Because according to them, $700,000 is an awful lot of money for something that, and I said, I can't give you details because if we give you the details, then they won't know that.
We believe it enhances security significantly by allowing us to staff state-of-the-art weapons detection system that we can move from place to place and perform random searches at any point in time on any school day at all the middle schools and all the high schools.
I understand that and I support that.
Yes, sir.
I just want to make sure that we're not saying, well, this is going to solve our problem. We still have the problem with having a facility that you cannot get into.
Well, we have one designated entrance point for every school. We have lockout areas in every school. In other words, you go into a capture area when you come in. We keep all the other the entrances secured. We have all kind of safety and security systems in place. What we struggle with is dealing with issues where people have resorted to violence to address some issue they have. And the ability to make anything 100% safe doesn't really exist in a free society. We want to make it as safe as we reasonably and possibly can do. And this, we believe, is a good step, additional step, because this board has voted over several years to significantly increase the amounts that we spend devoted to safety and security for our students and for our employees.
I just hope that we can look at making an improvement on preventing someone from opening the door and letting someone in.
As you know, we have signage on every door asking people, just like when you walked in this back door today. On the flip side of that sign, it instructs us to ignore that door and not let anybody in it. And in fact, we instructed our operations people over the summer to go through and make sure that we had one of those up-to-date signs on every exterior door in every facility in the district.
I walked out of a door today and a big horn started sounding. I was wondering if we had that in every school. If a student opened the door, you would hear that horn sound, And that would alert to the people in there that we have a door that was locked, but now it's opened by someone from the inside, and we cannot lock the doors on the inside.
No, we can't lock them to the inside, but they're all locked to the outside. Our default position is every exterior door is locked.
Have we given any thought to hiring additional personnel to be in our schools?
Yes, sir. That's the personnel to operate that weapons detection would be additional personnel.
About personnel in the school.
We also have hired additional school resource officers through grants that we've gotten from the state. And we have, is Travis back there somewhere, Travis Forrester? Where?
School resource officer has a.
Dennis, you're sitting in for Travis. Do you know how many pending grant proposals we have at Department of Public Safety? Is it 5 or 6? We'll have to send that to you. We have 6 pending. So we have 6 requests into Department of Safety, the State Department of Public Safety, to fund 6 more school resource officers as we're ultimately over time replacing zone patrol with those grant funded positions. We put 3 or 4 in this year. We have 6 now that we should be approved before the start of the next school year.
Every resource officer we have in every high school, in every middle school, that resource officer has a weapon.
Yes, sir. We do not have any school resource officers that are not armed.
All right. Would there be any thought about hiring additional personnel?
Just those that I mentioned.
Not be time to
those that I mentioned to you through those Department of Public Safety grants.
You know, I was thinking if we hired retired police officers and retired military, then I would know I've got someone in the school building, if something happens, that they can stop it.
We would want whoever we employ to be appropriately trained for the task of being armed and securing a facility that's occupied by students. And that's kind of a different skill set from some of those that you described. So any people like that that we would employ, we'd want them to have training specifically toward that purpose and to be able to be commissioned as a law enforcement officer.
I just hope that we will continue to look at and discuss and look at different ways that we can improve our safety features.
Yes, sir.
And, you know, we've got 2 meetings in June, then we don't meet in July. And so then we got August and we got school starting. Maybe there's something that our school district can do that will help us to kind of continue to look at what we have in addition to this.
Yes, sir.
Because this $700,000 is a lot of money, but when you look at the number of schools we have, it's a very rare thing to look at putting that in all schools. But anyway, I just wanted to make sure that we were going to continue to look at security and that you would let the board know what things we're looking at so that we can discuss and look at that.
Yes, sir.
And my last one, we had here, we're looking at, they said perhaps temporary inflation. And so I understand what it says here. If we do have to go above that, then the only thing we have right now is the fund balance.
We felt like there was a temporary need to add additional funding for that purpose. We'd come to you and ask you to set aside fund balance. What's happened in the last 2 months is actually consumer price inflation has declined in the last 2 months. The rate of increase has declined. So we hope that's a continuing positive trend, but our concern is that might be a continuing positive trend from that standpoint, which could indicate the onset of a recession.
We have to have a certain amount to make sure secure we have the bond ratings that.
We're well positioned for that, Mr. Sutter.
And then how much additional do we have should the inflation become worse or whatever may happen?
We have
how many mills have we got to work with? Are the mills going to change? Are we going to have the same number of mills that we've got now 3 months from now?
If you support and the board passes this millage increase, you're going to have less mills than you had this year, but it's going to be 4.5 more than the decreased amount. So you're going to go from 150.8 to 147.7.
The value of that mill can't change.
The value of the mill will likely change in a positive way, but we've projected that to the limit we're comfortable with projecting it based on the current. In other words, the auditor set that millage in October, the rollback millage. We have the benefit now of having seen the October collections, November, December, January, February, March, April, and May. So what you have in front of you, we've looked at the trend on the collection and estimated some growth in the mill value. Could it exceed that? It might, but we don't want to project it any more than we have based on the experience we have to date with the value increasing.
We'll make certain that we have the mills available and that we don't think that no matter what happens, we can go to our fund balance, because that's limited.
Well, you have both millage available. You got 18 mills available, and then you got a considerable amount in fund balance that could be redirected for that purpose.
18 mills, so how much total money is that?
18 mills, over $20 million. How much is it, Robin? 23? $28 million.
We got $28 million.
That's millage beyond that 4.5 mills. And that does not include any fund balance.
The 4 mills we're going to vote tonight to approve that millage, that increase in millage for us.
Yes, sir. You're going to vote to actually decrease our millage from 150.8 to 147.7, but that's more than the auditor decreased it. Less than the auditor decreased it, I'm sorry.
I just have a concern about our economy.
As do we.
And I remember the last time we had a very difficult time for 2 or 3 years in this school district. But we were much better off than other school districts because we had something we could fall back on.
Yes, sir. And that's a reason we want to be real cautious about the reliance on fund balance. We also, there are a lot of things, the book that contains all the items that were requested is about that thick. But what you see in here is what we focused on, and that is increased compensation for our teachers and our other employees, and very little else added, because we don't want to be positioned somewhere that we can't sustain a recession. And of course, the first thing that we would recommend to you if a recession occurred is that you try to deal with that through attrition. So as we managed that, the greatest recession since the Depression in 2010, 11, along in there, we were able to do that without furloughing people and without anyone losing their job. They might have got a different job, but they didn't lose their job. So we would want to always, as we look at cycles in the economy, try to position ourselves to minimize the negative impact to our employees should a recession occur.
We'll make sure that what we're doing is that we've got everything taken care of for right now, that we looked at all the weaknesses that we had, and you have taken steps to eliminate those weaknesses, such as salaries that we have, and we're certainly giving teachers more money. May not be as much as some people want, but I think we're doing pretty well on that as far as that goes, because I'd like to give $4,000 every teacher myself, but we can't do that. Anyway, I thank you. I appreciate it. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Sutton. Anyone else have any questions or comments? Hearing none, Ms. Stokes, would you call the roll, please? Everybody knows what the motion is on the floor, right?
Right.
Okay, Ms. Stokes?
Ms. Doolin? No. Ms. Goodwin-Cowell?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis,
Yes.
Mrs. Morrison Fair,
Yes.
Mrs. Mosley, Mr. Sailors,
Yes.
Dr. Stiles, Mr. Suddeth,
Yes.
Mrs. Wells,
Yes.
Mr. Meek.
Yes.
9 yes, 1 no.
Motion carries. This is the only item we have on the agenda tonight. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'd like to move, we adjourn.
Hold just a second.
Our appreciation to the board for your support of the administration's recommendation tonight. And let me just express my appreciation, not just to the finance staff, but to all the people that are sitting out there from the staff tonight, all the hours, and the amount of work that they put into the presentation for tonight. We're very appreciative of all their work. Thank you again.
Thank you, everybody. Mr. Sailors, you made a motion to adjourn. Who seconded?
Yes, sir, I did.
We have a motion and a
Who
second.
did?
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
I
All
heard
opposed, say
it.
no. Motion carries.
Well,
We
then
are
when they start
adjourned.
talking, you
Thanks,
forget.
everybody.
Yeah.
I always miss the second, so.